Earthlings, and welcome to the first and last for a few months episode of filmed in my home in San Rafael, California. While I'm here on spring break, the next few are going to come from Boston again, and then I'll be back here, because I'll have graduated in May. But more importantly, this is the first episode since the death of Chuck Berry, without whom none of my influences at all would be here. He was, if not one, the originator of rock and roll, and in turn R&B, and if not the beginning, an important link in several chain reactions that produced what music is today. But anyway, as I promised, today I'm talking about my song Armistice Day Part 2. And I figure, so I don't mention the shit out of Matt Jaffe's name in this video, I'm just gonna get all his influences on the song out of the way, which are very, very small, even though I mention the shit out of his name. Basically, he has a song called Armistice Day, which is about Veterans Day. I think sometime around Veterans Day 2015, he posted a picture to the Distractions Facebook page with the caption, "A hard rain's gonna fall." And I didn't know at the time that was a Patti Smith song. So I actually assumed it was a lyric from the song Armistice Day, which is where you get the title Armistice Day Part 2, and the opening lyric, "The rain came down on Armistice Day." And that is where all his influences, or Jaffinations you could call them, end. The song is really about the Paris attacks, which happened a couple days after Veterans Day 2015, as most of you remember. Hence all the references to Paris things like the cafes and the Moulin Rouge and the Eiffel Tower and the Champs-Élysées and the Metro and the Louvre, the Glass Pyramid in the second verse. People who live in glass pyramids, I guess they shouldn't throw stones. But really, the song was also a prayer that France wouldn't succumb to the same Islamophobia that my country succumbed to in the wake of 9/11, or the worse among us succumbed to in the wake of 9/11, and Islamophobia which still persists today and has been manifestly on display in recent actions of the federal government. Even during Obama's presidency, it was clearly uglily on display, if uglily is a word. It's a cross between a shoe and a flower, uglily. The lyrics also took inspiration from several articles I read on the internet in the wake of the Paris attacks. I don't necessarily want to say shaming, but pointing out the slight hypocrisy of sending all our sympathy towards Paris when Syria is in even bigger disarray, just because Paris has much more romantic connotations, such as being the city of love and being a chic city, that frankly, Damascus doesn't have the same connotations, let alone Aleppo. But in terms of the music, pretty much everything was spawned from the last chorus at the end with the ba ba bas. By the way, that lyric, "Or You Could Love," I believe was a hashtag that Marillion started on Facebook. I'm assuming they started it because they used it after some other tragedy happened born out of hate. I originally wanted to call the song Armistice Day Part 2, the shallow version, before I ended the "Or You Could Love" at the end of the lyrics. But the music in that section was pretty much the genesis of the whole song. Actually, when I first thought it up, I had this much more stupid lyric. Same thing that the Beatles did with Yesterday. It originally had a more stupid lyric about scrambled eggs. The lyric was something like, you give me that fire death like a dragon crow. But the actual music in that section, including the melody, was more inspired by, I wanted to create something with a similar vibe to Psychiatric Explorations of the Fetus with Needles by the Flaming Lips. And it's got that same chord near the end, and it's got a similar melody, just a bit higher. And the fetus became you could love, and pretty much the verses of the song were just a slightly simplified version of that chord progression. I just took out a few chords and wrote those shallow lyrics about how, we're so sad that Paris is ruined, which it isn't, but slightly marred by a terrorist attack, and yet we, in general, weren't paying as much attention to what was actually going on in the Middle East, and it was kind of a satirical portrait of someone who loves Paris, but doesn't really care for those from Muslim countries, simply because that's where the Paris attack terrorists were from, I believe. We don't see Syria over here as a beautiful country in the same way we do France. We once had romance there, and now it's gone, but you had no romance to begin with. Lyrics that make you sound like an asshole, which is why I tacked the "or you could love" onto the end. And although I haven't posted it here yet, but I probably will sometime in the near future, I played it at a house show I did while I was on tour with Matthew Azrieli last summer. Basically, we did a house show at my house, and I opened for him, and I got some of my friends from school who had their own band, Phoenix Uprising. When I made a demo of that song with a full band in mind, I heard this guitar line in the intro where I was already playing the ending melody on the piano, the da da da, that thing, and I wanted to put some guitar part on it that wasn't just strumming the chords. I came up with that da 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 thing. As you can hear in the video, which I will eventually post, Zane Hornick plays it beautifully, especially with that added phaser and chorus, which definitely suit it to a T. And I also wrote the vocal harmonies that you hear at the end. I'll also be playing it at my senior recital at Berkeley, which I'm going to be doing late in April 27th to be exact. And I'll be posting each individual song from that recital over the months of May and June, and those songs will be talked about in the corresponding episodes, many of which will be filmed right here. Need there be more to be said? I guess I could talk about some of the individual lyrics, other than the opening line. There was that line, we'll throw out his people with open arms. That's definitely one of my favorite lines, at least in the second verse, if not the whole song. I didn't want to say we'll welcome his people with open arms, because I wanted to say open arms because they're pretending to be a leader of the free world, but at the same time not welcoming these people. So that's how I got the line, throw out his people with open arms. And that is, I believe, all there is to say about Armistice Day Part 2. Next week, another Sound Mind back in Boston with not so picturesque scenery. But until then, Gafaba.